We're going to get started. If you can take a seat. If everybody can take a seat, we can get started. The sooner we get started, the sooner everybody can go home and have dinner and spend time with your kids and your family. Good evening, everyone. Can you please take a seat?
Jason, do you want to start or you want me to do it?
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming back. By a show of hands, who was here at our June meeting? Wow. Thank you for coming back. I introduced myself the first time, but I'll reintroduce myself. I am Kathy Ebaugh. I'm the Director of Planning for JB Pro. We are a sub-consultant to Axis Engineering with Jason. We are based out of Gainesville, and one of the specialties that we have in our firm is to do community engagement. With me, there he is Nick Hill, who is our Director of Long-Range Planning and Community Engagement Efforts, so you're going to hear a lot from Nick this evening. I just want to quickly let you know as you've been looking around at these boards and jumping into the discussion, I just want to quickly let you know Nick's going to explain exactly what's in detail, but a lot of these, especially the two boards over here and this board over here that has the kind of drawing stuff on it, those were ideas that we are giving back to you that we heard in June. So if you remember, everybody had a big map on your table at the June workshop. What we did is we took all of the ideas that people put on their maps and we merged them together to create that map. And now we're bringing it back to you and saying, is this the direction you wanted us to head? So that is nothing in written stone map. That is an ideas map. That is what we are reflecting that we saw when you wrote on your maps at the June workshop. And then the two boards over there are the top ideas, kind of sharing, pulling things together, finding commonalities between the different discussion points in each of the 7 discussion points that we talked about again in June. So those two and that one are a reflection back and saying, this is what we thought we heard you say, or this is what we saw you write on your maps. Is this really the direction you want us to head in? Is this the right direction for us? So please don't look at these and think, oh, that is really going to happen there, or oh, that idea, yeah, I don't agree with that. Well, that's what we're here for, because this is the second in what will be a series of 3 workshops. The first one is brainstorming. That's what we did in June, right? We just brainstormed ideas. We thought about everything that we might want to think about. Now we are coming back to you saying, here's some information of what we heard. Here's some unification, some commonalities that we heard. And then the final one is really going to be that establishment of what the community's vision is from here to 2050. And tonight, though, unlike the first time when we just did brainstorming, tonight we're actually going to ground it in truth. Nick has been doing a lot of work in trying to understand who Deltona is, and he's going to be sharing some things that you probably don't know about your community. Usually that's what happens at these things. You start learning things about your community. So Nick's going to share with you some ideas of what that is. And once again, we are really privileged and thankful that Deltona has asked us to participate with you in this process. These ideas that we're presenting to you are not ours. We are a mirror of you. We are bringing in ideas that we hear from you, and then we're coming back to you and asking you, did we hear you right? Because in the end, the vision for Deltona's to 2050 is really yours, not ours. So we thank you for continuing to participate in this process. We're so glad that so many of you have come back this evening for the second workshop, and we look forward to continuing this process as we move forward. And at that, I'm going to turn it over to Nick.
Round of applause for Kathy, right? Thank you, Kathy. Thank you, handling for the first workshop. All All right, everyone, like Kathy said, thank you so much for coming. My name is Nicholas Hill. I'm a senior planner with JB Pro, and I'm also a proud member of the Deltona Vision 2050 project team. We have a lot of fun tonight. We got a lot of things scheduled, so let's go ahead and get started. All right, so we're going to begin by reintroducing you to the project team. After that, we're going to talk about the comprehensive plan and talk about how this vision process will tie into it. After that, we're going to talk about you, the city of Deltona, where we're at today, and how that's influenced by how the city was originally founded. And then we're going to talk about the community vision, what we did in workshop 1 and how that directly ties in to what we're going to do tonight. And then finally, we're going to talk about next steps. All right? Sound like a plan? Let's do this. All right, so here we have several members of the project team with us here tonight. Can I get all the members of city staff to wave to our lovely audience that are here to work tonight? Excellent. We have plenty of them here in attendance. Did I hear a clap? Let's clap for your staff. That's great. Awesome. And this project is also led by Access Infrastructure, who have several representatives here tonight. Can I get a wave from you all? Thank you. And then we also have members of JB Pro here tonight, including 2 lovely workers in the back who are 2 brand new interns whose first day is today. So please give them a warm welcome. And then we also have Kathy and myself here as well. There are other consultants on the project, but they're more working in the background, 4G Planning and the Corandino Group, who unfortunately could not be here tonight. So whenever we do these types of events, we always like to start with the basics. What is a comprehensive plan? A comprehensive plan is really just a state-mandated master plan for the future of your community. And that master plan helps guide local decision-making, provides guidance to landowners on what they can do with their property, and my favorite, implements a shared community vision. More on that in a second. So the state of Florida actually tells us in the comprehensive planning world what we need to include within our plans, what topics we need to address. And these topics have to be addressed in their own individual chapters of the plan, which we call elements of the comprehensive plan. And so the elements of the comprehensive plan that you have today in the city of Deltona are organized as follows: future land use, transportation, housing, infrastructure, conservation, parks and recreation, intergovernmental coordination, and capital improvements. Now, the city actually has 2 additional elements, which are actually optional, including the public schools facilities element and the economic development element. So for whatever reason, in the state in their infinite wisdom, they do not require these elements, but the city of Deltona recognizes that these ideas are critical to the success of Deltonas in the future, and so they deserve their own element as well. And the reason I really bring that up to you is just I want to let you know that all of those topics will be addressed as part of the comprehensive plan update. So if you came to this workshop and you want to talk about any of those individual items, great news, you're in the right place, because we're ready to talk about them. So you may be thinking, we already have an adopted plan, right? Why do we need to bother even updating it? Well, there's a few great reasons. One is to maintain consistency with Florida statutes, which is ever-changing. One is to prepare for future growth, whatever that may look like in this context. One is to reflect changes in local conditions, understanding that the Deltona of 2017 is not the same Deltona of 2024. Reevaluate our current practices and standards to identify ways that we can be better as a community and do things better. And then, of course, my favorite, to implement a shared community vision. And that visioning process is really important. And in fact, I would say the most important reason up here. Because that visioning process allows us to take a step back as a community, survey where we've come since the plan was last updated in 2017, and answer 3 critical questions as a community. Where are we now? Where do we want to go? And how do we get there? And this visioning process is all lined up with answering those 3 questions. Workshop 1 is all about answering where are we now by identifying the issues and opportunities that we're facing Deltona, as well as providing some of your own individual visions for what the future of Deltona should look like. Here in Workshop 2 tonight, we are going to answer the question, where do we want to go? By consolidating and building consensus towards that vision that you provided in that first workshop. And then in Workshop 3, which I hope you join us for, which we're currently shooting for sometime in October, you are going to help us implement that vision by working with us to draft strategies in real time to implement your vision, to make sure that vision can be achieved by the year 2050. So before we get too farther into the visioning process, I think it's important to talk about existing conditions within the community. And you really can't talk about that unless you talk about how the city was originally founded. So, anyone, by raise of hands, know who these three handsome brothers are? I love it. Okay. I didn't hear a name in there. I think I missed that. Mackle brothers. Okay, so this audience seems really familiar with these brothers already. So, the Mackle brothers were the owners of the Deltona Corporation. Now, that name probably sounds a little familiar to you. They were one of many organizations in the middle of last century that were developing pre-platted communities all across the state, often along the coastlines. And they had a real profit-generating venture. So what they did was they bought lots of lands, typically on the cheap. They subdivided it many, many times for their residential lots, and they sold these lots often to northerners who were sick of being cold 9 months out of the year. Right? And that's what the Mackle brothers really tried to do here in Deltona. Now, they actually did a few things better than many of their contemporaries, which we'll talk about in a second. But it's easy to see what they were trying to do. They were trying to sell Florida suburban living. They were really trying to sell that vision. And when they designed that community, they had that in mind. It's important to note that they weren't really community developers. They were really more like residential developers, because they provided places for people to live in beautiful suburban neighborhoods. What they didn't do, though, is think too hard about where those folks are going to live, where they're going to play, how they're going to grow, and how they're going to learn. And you can see that reflected kind of in the existing land use map of the city today and how property is currently being utilized. Over 2/3 of the city's total developed land is currently being used for single-family residential development. 2/3. And less than 10% of that total area is being used for employment-generating uses. Your commercial, your office, your industrial. It's probably a good reason why many of the folks that live here today that are still working are working outside of the city. It's something the city's getting a lot better at over time, but that's still occurring. And that's impacted from how the city was originally founded. Another important thing to note is that out of the 39,000 roughly platted lots that were originally as part of Deltona, 12% of those lots are vacant, which means we are running out of that vacant land. That vacant land that could be utilized for more commercial ventures, yes, more residential, but more government uses that continue to support our day-to-day operations every single day. And that's important. Now, one thing that the Mackle brothers did to make sure that this community stayed a quiet Florida suburban community was to intentionally design their roadway network to limit connectivity. Does anyone know why they would want to limit connectivity? They wanted to limit connectivity primarily so they could eliminate cut-through traffic. So that way, when you're outside in your neighborhood in your quiet residential home, people aren't speeding by trying to get from point A to point B. It often keeps our neighborhoods quieter. And generally speaking, the intent is to make them safer for our kids to play out on the streets and to meet with their friends outside and to hang out with your neighbor. But there is a downside to that approach. The downside to that approach is whenever anybody needs to leave their home to go shop, to go to the local park system, to hang out with their friends at a nearby restaurant, they're all filtering out on just a handful of roads. Your Saxon, your Providence, your Howlands, they're all moving out towards a small fraction of roads of what the city's total roadway inventory is. And that was by design. They wanted to eliminate that cut-through traffic. And so I would bet that many of you on your way here today experience some traffic congestion along one of those major roads. It's something that we heard over and over again on that first workshop. Traffic congestion is an issue, particularly on your major thoroughfares, as I'm showing on that map up there. And we'll get to that. So the Mackel brothers, believe it or not, when they were developing the community, actually had a pretty innovative way of managing flooding within the community. I know that's hard to believe now, but it's true. And unfortunately, what the Mackel brothers didn't realize, and what a lot of developers of that time didn't realize, is that Florida would experience more and more flooding. As a region, we're getting more and more storm events, and they're getting more and more severe. They didn't foresee that issue happening, particularly as the region continued to develop, making our existing stormwater system often incapable of dealing with the increased flooding that we're experiencing here in the community. And so one way to really help manage those flooding areas is through wetlands. Now, often communities have a good range of wetlands. They have a solid inventory. But here in Deltona, part of the way the Mackel brothers and other contemporaries of their time decided to develop communities was really, unfortunately, to wipe out a lot of those natural wetland areas. A lot of those environmental features that made Deltona special, that made the region special, that made Florida itself special. And although the city staff has done a great job of maintaining some of the existing wetlands that were left over based upon that, previously designed plat, we still need to make sure that they're preserved in the future. And that's especially true for the areas immediately surrounding the city, where there's tons of wetland areas, and we know we have a duty as a community, as a region, to help preserve them. More on that in a second. And I just want to point out that we do have a great park system here in Deltona. It's found all throughout the community. But of course, as I'm sure you can see, there are some gaps in our park network. There are some gaps in the amenities that are available at our parks, and we understand that, and we'll look into that as part of this process. And we also know there's some very limited conservation land that's found within the community, mostly as a result of a lot of our wetlands and bugs and bunnies, unfortunately, being developed over as the city was originally founded. But we have a duty to make sure that those are preserved moving forward. And of course, we have a trail network, right? And that trail network cuts in and out of the city, particularly along the southern side that you can't really see in that map. But there's a southern rail network that connects to a regional network. But we don't really see a lot of vertical trail networks going on in the community. It's something that you've brought up in the first workshop, and something that we hope to address as part of this visioning and comprehensive plan update process. So I just want you to think about, as you are providing your vision here tonight, think about the existing conditions impacting Deltona today. Think about the existing land use pattern. Do we want to continue to rely upon our predominantly residential, suburban residential character, or do we want to start slowly introducing a more diverse mix of uses? Do we want our transportation system to rely on the ability of those certain few roadways to handle the majority of our traffic as they try to get from their homes to places of work, places to play? And are we going to address flooding issues? I would think so. And what can we do to address flooding issues within our community, knowing that we have only a small amount of wetlands that are able to soak up some of those drainage issues? And do we need to expand our park service? What amenities do we need? Is our park service, our park program, are they serving our current residents? Are they serving our future residents? Something to think about. The last map I want to show you here is your future land use map. By a show of hands, is anyone familiar with the future land use map? Awesome, excellent, I'm glad to see it. Future land use map is actually adopted as part of the comprehensive plan. And it's really a vision for how land is intended to be developed or allowed to be developed over time within the planning horizon. Right now, that's 2025, and as part of this process, we hope to update that planning horizon to 2050. So let me ask you something. Your future land use map has over 75% of the city as low-density residential development, with less than 10% being utilized for employment-generating uses, even less for government facilities, the things that help us operate on a day-to-day basis. So I just really want to pose that question to you. Is this the vision for Deltona in the year 2050? Is this how we want to utilize our most valuable resource, our land and its people? One thing I just want to note about that is there is no wrong answer here tonight. Really. There's only one right answer, and that's the answer that you all come up with as a community right here, as we build consensus towards a shared community vision. So Kathy is going to talk about the input that we provided in Workshop 1, and then I'm going to be back to talk about how that ties in directly into what we are going to hear from you tonight.
Thanks, Nick. Good job with both. Okay. So we're going to recap just real quickly what we talked about back on June 15th. As you might recall, we had small group tables, we had a series of questions we talked about, and we had a big map in the middle that we drew up on at the individual tables. And we had a lot of great thoughts, and it was our job over the last couple months to bring those thoughts together to try and identify where the commonalities between them are, so that we can develop into that shared community vision. So we're moving down the funnel. We started at the very top, and now we're kind of in the middle. And the last workshop we'll have will be the final one. Let's see if I can do this. Okay. So when we talked about character, these were the three major things that we heard everybody talk about. That first, we want to be family friendly. And in fact, Deltona is much more affordable than the areas around you, and has a lower overall population age demographic than most of the state of Florida. So becoming family friendly is definitely something that is a part of the character of Deltona. You want to increase your hubs for art and culture. And as Nick mentioned earlier, you are predominantly a single-family community, but you've identified and started to talk about where those hubs could be. And in doing so, you want to maintain your small-town charm. You're not in Orlando, you're not in Daytona Beach, you're in Deltona, you're kind of halfway in the middle, and there's a unique kind of small-town character that comes with that, and you want to maintain that moving forward. And in doing so, you want to enhance your natural beauty. You have great lakes, you're on the banks of a beautiful lake, and then you have smaller lakes inside your city. So that natural beauty and that natural character is something that was really important. So those three commonalities were what we heard from the various tables when we pulled the different ideas together. The next one was when we talked about land use and how should we use land in the future? How should we reconsider or consider how development happens here in Deltona? And the first one was supporting redevelopment. And that goes to what Nick was mentioning, that predominantly your single-family plats that were originally established have been built out. You don't have many left. And so it is going to be not about new development as it is about how do we redevelop, how do we go back and enhance the areas that have already been developed. And how do we identify where we put activity centers? And when we talk about activity centers, those could be anything from a commercial area, they could be a mixed-use downtown, which at least at the table I was at, people really wanted. It could be at where our parks are, it could be where schools are. Those are all different types of activity centers. So how do you, and the idea of an activity center is where do you foster and promote active uses between people, whether it's for recreational purposes, whether it's for work purposes, whether it's for a variety of purposes, as in with mixed use. So that was the final one in land use, was that you really want to integrate mixed uses moving forward. There are a lot of areas that right now are very distinctly residential, commercial, public facilities, schools. You want areas that are integrated together. And our team was able to come in a little bit early today, so we drove around town, and that's, what you told us is exactly what we saw, that when we were in a residential area, we were very much in a residential area. When we were in a commercial area, we were very much in a commercial area. When we were in a school area, we were very much in a school area. And having been, worked for school districts, I knew exactly when we were entering one because I saw the big line of cars waiting for dismissal. So those are kind of the things that we're looking at when we're starting to talk about land use and what you talked about land use and what you want. And then we moved into housing. And housing was life stage housing. And life stage housing is the idea that there is housing for all people at all stages of their life, from young adult all the way through senior and active adults, for working families, single families, the young professional or young worker who's coming out and starting to make their career on their own. That we want housing that meets everybody's needs, and we want that housing to be interconnected amongst everyone else. We don't want an area just for seniors. We don't want just an area for young people. We want areas that everybody can interconnect together. And that's in the idea of creating that complete neighborhood, that a neighborhood is a place that everybody of all generations can come and live and partake and really create that sense of place and that sense of community that is Deltona. And in doing so, that we're creating a strong suburban fabric. And suburban is different than urban communities, and it's different than rural communities. Suburban is residential based. It is an area that we expect that people are going to be the bedroom communities to larger cities, but they're also growing more and more as places where people can wake up in the morning and get dressed from the waist up and work in a remote consideration. I mean, more and more people are doing that, and you see Deltona as an opportunity, an opportunity for Deltona to really diversify your workforce without having to go somewhere else, because now people can live and work in their own home. In fact, I know Axis Engineering, their whole team works remotely, so they're all nodding their head going, yeah, we do this every day. We at JB Pro, we tend to be a little more traditional in the way we work. We like to get on each other's nerves and go in the office every day. But that's the point, right? That there's something for everybody, and everybody works best in a different situation. Me personally, even on a couple weeks ago when we had that hurricane day, I was in the office because I still work best when I'm surrounded by other people. Nick, on the other hand, called me and said, I'll see you when the hurricane's over. When it came to employment and industry, this is the kind of stuff we were talking about. You want to diversify your employment base, whether that's by promoting opportunities for people to live and work at home, or whether it's by bringing in new economic centers, whether that's manufacturing and industrial areas. We drove quite a bit around the area where the Amazon distribution centers are developing, whether that's through small businesses, whether through somebody told us there were no restaurants. We found a small coffee shop and had lunch, so I felt proud of ourselves for finding a small restaurant. But small businesses are the backbone of America, right? Those are really the places where, you know, if you're going to get that coffee or you're getting that sandwich, the money is staying in your local community. You're not giving it and it's going to a corporate office that's somewhere outside of your community. So fostering those small businesses so that you can have high-wage, high-skilled jobs here in Deltona, and diversifying your employment base so people don't always have to go to Orlando, or they don't have to go to Daytona Beach. They can create a life for themselves right here in Deltona. In order to do that, we need to address transportation and connectivity. You know, it was, 2 o'clock in the afternoon? It was 2 o'clock in the afternoon and we were in the middle of a traffic jam. And it's because you have so few major transportation connections. So all of those residential developments that you have, they're all feeding onto the same roads. And so how to address that connectivity, how to address that transportation center. You can see I'm wearing sneakers. This is my uniform whenever I'm in a workshop. I've got a dress and a pair of sneakers on. I do a lot of walking, and it's going to be through walking. It's going to be through trails. You know, the road network is pretty well established. There isn't going to be a lot of opportunities to create connections between roads, but you can create connectivity in other ways. And how do we do that? Through an expanded trail network is going to be really important. And then identifying how do we create connectivity at right center spots so that people are going to places in their cars and being able to really go park and then take care of everything they need and then go back. When it comes to parks, recreation, and natural resources, we heard a lot about accessibility. People want to be able to access these things very quickly. They don't want to always have to get in their car to go to a park. They want to be able to go to a pocket park. They want to be able to go to a dog park. They want to be able to go to waterfront. They want to enjoy the environment without always having to drive to those places. So how do we take advantage of the natural resources that are in Deltona through an extended trail network to integrate your neighborhoods? That's the question that people talk to us about and that we heard a lot about when it comes to parks, recreation, and natural resources. And then finally, public facilities and services. We heard about maintaining the public facilities we have today, whether those are school facilities, whether those are utilities, whether those are your parks, that maintenance was going to be really important to you. You recognize that you don't have a lot of places to have your public facilities and assets, and so maintenance and making sure that those places are protected for you is going to be really important to you. You talked about increasing your fire and police presence, especially at the local level. I believe today some of those services are paid for and provided for at the county level, and how do you bring those down to your local community? And then water security and recognizing that flooding is an issue. Again, it was something that was thought about, which a lot of vested platted lots communities didn't think about it. All they thought about is where to put those lots. So, you know, your founders did think about it, but they had a hard time going to the next step and realizing that it wasn't going to be just about Deltona, that everything that was going to happen around Deltona was going to have an impact. And then, of course, Florida, it does get more rain than we ever have in previous years, so how do we address that? And how do we make sure that we address the issue so that you're not flooding? And then we did the mapping exercise. And again, as like I mentioned when I did the introduction, this map is not by any means something that is completed. We overheard some comments of people kind of pointing out certain things and, oh, that's going to happen there, that's going to happen there. No, this map is not a done deal. This map is just an idea. Map is just thoughts that we pulled from all of the different tables. And a lot of your tables did a great job at marking up your maps, and we just took the common themes that we found and we put them in. And you can see how we did that. So if it's a red area, this was an area that you and your table said, we see these as major employment activity centers. So these are your downtown areas. These are where you expect mixed use. And we're going to get into those a little bit more in a second. If it's the kind of orange-brown color, those were minor activity centers. So those aren't necessarily mixed use, but they could be, but those are really focused in a tighter area and kind of connect your neighborhoods together. If it's the dotted areas, these are areas that you suggested to us might be available in the future for annexation, so bringing in new land as you do develop out. Where could you grow? How could you grow? How could you bring new resources, especially if those resources were employment-based or economic-based to balance out the residential base, so the rest of the community. The highlighted areas, kind of the block areas, those are your major public facilities areas. The little, I don't know what the wave, okay. The wave is for where drainage areas need to improve. The little purple dotted areas are intersection areas, places that we would like to increase connectivity. Your brown areas are your commercial corridors, your dotted ones are the trails, and the teal ones are your pedestrian crossings. And again, these aren't things that we're suggesting to you, these are things that you suggested at your tables, and we just took the common ideas and put them together in one map. We're asking, did we get it right? We're asking you, we've taken what were, I think there were 8 tables that day. We've taken 8 tables and put them into one map. So we expect that you're going to do some fine tuning with us today when we look at that map on the wall in a little bit. So let's look a little bit closer at that the downtown Deltona area. This was on, this was one that there was definitely a lot of unity between the different tables. Everybody identified this area as a place that you saw downtown Deltona going. And partly, I think it's because you already have some major employment center areas happening there, so it's not just in a residential area, but I think it was also because you have some new developments happening in this area, and you have the potential to do some annexation. So you saw this as an area that could provide downtown Deltona as a real place. The next one, went too fast. The next one, and I don't have a pointer on this, but is the next one we're trying to focus on is that green corridor that goes kind of from the downtown down to the ecotourism commercial area and goes through the arts district. This is an area that we see as a corridor. This is a corridor that could be developed that you saw as something that could be multiple ways through pedestrian connectivity that you could connect different communities together. And then the final one, and I know the table I was at, they talked a lot about this one, the Ecotourism Commercial Center and the Arts Parks District, and then an office hub that are kind of all closely related to each other and could be connected through a trails network. And really saw that these were three areas that could be, in the future, a very vibrant part of the future of Deltona, especially that Ecotourism and Commercial Center down by the water. So now, and I think Nick's going to come up again. Now we're going to move to, while Nick comes up, I'm going to ask everybody to pull out your phones. When was the last time you were at a workshop and somebody said, take your phones out, not put them away? We want you to take your phone out and put your QR capture code up to the little thing and capture that little code, and then Nick's going to walk you through an exercise.
Yep, so turn on your camera app and pull out your phone and just point it at that little QR code up there. Once you do that, a link will pop up. Just go ahead and select on that link, and the program will take care of the rest. If you have an issue connecting, please raise your hand. We have several Gen Z and millennials around here that are helping out with that. Yes, it's no active poll right now because we haven't started it. Yeah, the next slide is the question slide. Thank you, though. Appreciate it. So if you can't have access to it, we'll give you about another minute or so. Raise your hand.
Is everybody on? Anyone, who's having problems with it?
Yeah. So what we are going to do tonight as you get logged on is we are going to build that vision statement in real time. What's going to be included in that final community vision plan? We're going to start building that together right here. What is the terminology and the phrasing that we need to use? What phrases do we need to keep away from? We want to hear from you as part of this effort. So is everybody logged on? Yes. All right, everybody's at that screen? All right. Let's do it. Let's start with a warm-up question. What is your zip code? We want to make sure that we're reaching people in the city and that they're not all coming from a zip code that's way outside of the state. Want to make sure that we're reaching you in your own neighborhoods. All right, and so as these texts get bigger on here, that will tell you that more and more responses are tied to that specific answer. All right, so it seems the largest two that we have is 32725 and 38. I think everyone gets the idea. Now we're going to get into the visioning questions. All right, so which of the following in your eyes describes a vision statement? Is it a detailed plan for the city outlining specific goals, objectives, and policies for how to reach them? Is it a concise statement for outlining, for identifying a city's long-term aspirations? Or is it a summary of the daily operations and procedures needed to maintain current city programs and services? Let's see it. All right, we're bouncing around here. I like where your head is at. The correct answer It's the one at the top. Or actually, sorry, it's the middle. It bounced around already. It's a concise statement for identifying the city's long-term aspirations. It's short and sweet. It's easily recognizable. It's where the city wants to be. When somebody says this statement, you know immediately, ooh, we're talking about Deltona's future. Yes, the detailed plan outlining specific goals and actions to achieve them is the comprehensive plan. So that comes after we create the vision plan for the community. Those specific goals and policies that we're going to do to reach those goals, that's going to be done in the comp plan. That comes after what we do here for the visioning process. All right, now let's start the brainstorming. What is one word that best describes your vision for Deltona? Yeah, your vision in the year 2050. What's your vision for the year 2050 for the city of Deltona? Beautiful, exciting, quiet, residential, neighborhood. I doubt chaos is something that you want, but if it is, who am I to tell you your vision is wrong? All right, seeing a lot of different answers here. Safe, dynamic, clearly, two very popular answers here. I thought I said...
You gave an opportunity for seconds.
Gotcha, okay. Although I appreciate where your head is at. Let's get creative. Perfect. Live, work, play, community. That describes a mix of uses, right? That's something that a lot of communities are trying to strive for now, particularly those that are primarily residential today. Sustainable, community, entertainment, different, unique. These are all great words that we look forward to including in that final vision statement. All right, here's a fun one. What's one word or phrase that you would not like to see included in the vision plan? What's inappropriate for the future of Deltona? Chaos. Overcrowding, great. Sprawl. Absolutely. All right, still got 13 participants typing in their answers. Residential, interesting. Yeah, stagnant, overdeveloped, bedroom community. There's that word again, chaos. Annex, trashy, nastiness, corrupt. Dollar General. There's a few of those here. There's a few of those. Did I see car washes and... All right. We're going to close the poll in just a second here. Storage units. Yep. Blight. Perfect. Thank you. All right. So one of the most common words that we heard during Workshop 1 was family-oriented. We want Deltona to be for families. We are a family-oriented community. So I want to hear you, though, now that we heard that in the Workshop 1, on a scale from 1 to 5, with 5 being the most appropriate and 1 being the least appropriate, how appropriate is it to include the phrase family-oriented in the vision statement? That was the #1 phrase we kept hearing over and over again in Workshop 1. All right, I think that answer is pretty definitive there, with no one giving it a 1. So that's great to see. Thank you so much. That's really helpful for us as we start finalizing that vision statement. All right, so for our last question here, we have a couple of words that came up a lot during the Workshop 1. Quiet, vibrant, community-oriented, inclusive of all age groups, affordable, safe, beautiful, some other ones. So what we want to do is rank the following words and phrases from most appropriate up at the top to least appropriate down at the bottom. Okay? So you're going to be asked to select those different items and then drag them up or down after you select them, whether or not it's the most appropriate or the least appropriate. This one will take you a second, so I'm going to give you some time to do this one. I'm eager to hear what you all say. Safe. Absolutely. Quiet, we want to retain some of that quiet residential character. Community-oriented, seems like safe is a good option. Awesome. well-designed, community-oriented. You know, these aren't the things that were, let's just say, originally thought of when the community was founded, but these are the things that are being cultivated here in real time through your city staff, through your city leadership. These are what they're trying to do. If they're trying to make it safe and well-designed and community-oriented. I think you can reset your answer.
Doing, and then I'm like, I thought we were literally dragging and dropping them up to the top, so I didn't see an edit button.
So you can do like that, and it'll just keep.
Oh, okay.
All right, I'm going to give you just a few more seconds here. Come see me after class if you can't figure it out, I promise. I'll record your answer.
Haven't done it, so.
Yep. I see one participant still in there, 4 participants still ranking. We're going to give it another few seconds. Don't worry, come see me afterwards. If you feel like you didn't get a chance to do it to your heart's content, we'll document it, and we'll make sure to include it in our final tallies. All right, give another 10 seconds here, but I think the answers are pretty clear. Safe is the main priority here, community-oriented, well-designed, beautiful, vibrant, all wonderful things that we can describe, that we want to describe Deltona as in the year 2050. Things that really apply to the city today, but really could be enhanced in the future moving forward through this plan update. All right. Well, thank you so much for participating in that activity. You know us planners, we love our engagement toys. But we do have a few other activities for you to do here tonight to help us build consensus towards a shared community vision. We have 4 different activities here for you. The first is the Vision Consensus activity, which is located over on this wall over here. Basically, that takes the visions on a bunch of different topics that were provided by you during that first workshop and reflects them back at you. And so you have 3 different options for each topic area, and you're going to select the one that best reflects your vision for the future of Deltona. We also have the People and Preservation Board. That's that green, bluish one down at the back that Kathy is pointing out now. Thank you, Kathy. And that challenges you to balance the need for growth with the needs for preservation, because we can do both. Then we have the Vision Map Advancement, which Kathy showed you earlier here today. We're going to ask you to further define, refine, and add additional detail to that vision mapping that was done in that first workshop. And then finally, if you have any additional thoughts or comments at all related to the future of Deltona, that for whatever reason these activities do not help you facilitate, come find us on that community idea wall in the back. Kathy is raising her hand. That's where the community idea wall is. The last thing we want is for you to leave here today and feel like your voice wasn't heard. We want to make sure you get everything out that you want to get out about the future of Deltona. It matters. It's important to this process. And each of these boards that you see around the room are going to be facilitated by 2 project team members, one from city staff and one of the consulting team. So if you want to speak to someone from city staff, you can do that, as well as the consulting team. The purpose is you're going to speak directly to the people working on the project so they can hear your voice as to what you want to see for the future of the community. Now, before I release you to start doing these activities, I just want to note the next steps here in this process. We're going to summarize all of the input that you provide here tonight, as well as this presentation. A clean copy of the presentation is going to be uploaded as part of that summary sometime in September. We really hope you join us for the last visioning workshop, which is workshop 3, sometime in October, where you're going to help us develop implementation strategies for how we can achieve that vision in real time. And then finally, we're going to approve, hopefully go to your city council, and we're going to approve that vision plan sometime in winter 2024-2025 as we help refine that. Okay? So, at this time, what I would like to do is everyone to stand up, and you're allowed to go to any of those different activities in any order that you choose. We have members of the project team standing by each of these different tables, and we are here to facilitate some great discussions. Thank you so much for coming. We really appreciated that. Make sure you visit all 4 stations before you leave. Thank you again. And we had a great time, and we hope to hear from you tonight. Thank you.